The story of King Shahryar and Scheherazade. It is said that once upon a time there lived two great king brothers named Shahryar and Shazam. Shahryar was the eldest, and his power extended to the ends of the earth. Shahryar longed to see his brother, so he asked his chief minister to bring him to him. When Shazam arrived, his brother embraced him, and the two brothers spent the entire day together. Shahryar noticed his brother's pallor and sickness. The days passed, and Shahryar grew thinner. Shahryar thought his brother was homesick, but it turned out to be much worse. After 10 days, Shazam collapsed and told his brother the main reason for his sorrows. His queen had abandoned him, and he was now broken-hearted. He told Shahryar how he had been betrayed, and the great king could not believe his ears. After hearing his brother's story, Shahryar became so furious that he lost his mind. He decided that no woman could ever be trusted, and he planned a terrible thing. The king summoned his vizier and asked him to find him a wife. He intended to marry her one day and then kill her, continuing this practice until he had eliminated all the women in his kingdom. The vizier had an eldest daughter, Scheherazade, and a younger daughter, Dinarzade. The eldest daughter read many books and was very cultured. When she heard of the king's odious plan, she said to her father, "I would like King Shahryar to marry me, so that I can save our people or die like the other girls." When the vizier heard what his daughter had said, he was furious and forbade her from marrying the king. They argued for a long time, but Scheherazade would not be swayed. The vizier sent her to become the king's wife, saying, "May God not deprive me of you." Shahrazade's heart was filled with joy. After she had prepared and packed her belongings, she went to her younger sister, Dinarzade, and said to her, "My sister, listen to me carefully. When I go to the king, I will send for you. When you arrive, you must say, 'Sister, if sleep does not overcome you, then tell us a story.' In doing so, the king will release me and I will save the people of the kingdom. You must trust this plan." Dinarzade replied, "Great." That night, the vizier took Scheherazade to the great king, Shahryar, and married her to him. But when King Shahryar went to sleep that night, Scheherazade wept. When the king asked her why she was crying, she replied, "I have a sister, and I would like to bid her farewell." The king sent for her sister, who came and sat on the floor beside the bed. Dinarzade said, "My sister, if sleep does not overcome you, tell us one of your pleasant stories so we may spend the night, for I fear your absence." Scheherazade turned to King Shahryar and said, "Will you permit me to tell a story?" Shahryar replied, "Yes." Scheherazade was very pleased and said, "Listen. The story of the merchant and his wife. The first night it has reached me, O auspicious and wise king, that there was a wealthy merchant preparing to visit another country. He filled his bags with bread and dates and mounted his horse. His journey continued for several nights under God's protection, until he reached his destination. Upon completing his visit, he headed back to his homeland. He traveled for 3 days, and on the 4th day, he found an orchard and entered it to seek shade from the sun. Dinarzade said to her sister, "What a strange and beautiful story." Scheherazade replied, "It is nothing compared to what I will tell you tomorrow night, if the king spares me and lets me live. The story will be even better and more enjoyable." The king thought, "I will spare her until I hear the rest of the story, and then I will kill her the next day." He sat on the bank of a stream under a walnut tree, took out some loaves of bread and a handful of dates, and began to eat, throwing date pits to his right and left until he was satisfied. Then he stood up and said his prayer. No sooner had he finished his prayer than he saw a large jinn before him, holding a sword in his hand, standing with his feet on the ground and his head reaching towards the clouds. The jinn shouted, "Get up so I can kill you with this sword, just as you killed my son." The genie said, "Didn't you sit down, take some dates out of your bag, and eat them, throwing the pits around you?" The merchant replied, "Yes, I did." The genie said, "As you were throwing the pits, my son was walking beside you. One struck him and killed him. Now I must kill you." The merchant said, "Oh God, please don't kill me." The genie replied, "I swear by God that I will kill you just as you killed my son." The merchant said, "If I killed him, I did it by mistake. Please forgive me." The genie replied, "I must kill you." He grabbed the merchant and threw him to the ground. The merchant began to weep for his wife and children. The genie raised his sword as the merchant was drowning in tears and said, "There is no power or strength except with God, the Most High, the Almighty." The merchant was alarmed and said, "I swear by God that I did not kill your son." How did that happen? 1001 Nights. Dawn was approaching at this point in the story, and Scheherazade fell silent, leaving King Shahryar eager to hear the rest of the story. The story of the merchant and his wife. The second night, King Shahryar worked all the next day and returned home at night to Scheherazade. Dinarzade said to her sister, "Please, sister, if sleep does not overcome you, tell us one of your pleasant stories." The king added, "Let this be the end of the story of the genie and the merchant." He mounted his horse and continued on his way, finally arriving at his home, his wife, and his children. As dawn broke, Dinarzade said to her sister, "What a strange and beautiful story." Scheherazade replied, "Tomorrow night, I will tell you something even better and more enjoyable." When he saw them, he began to cry bitterly. His wife asked him, "What's wrong, my husband? Why are you sad when we're all happy and celebrating your return?" He replied, "Why shouldn't I be sad when I only have one more year to live?" Then he told her everything that had happened with the genie. When his family heard what he had said, they began to cry. It was a sad day, as all the children gathered around their father. The merchant spent the rest of the year in this state, then prayed to his Lord and bid farewell to his family. His sons clung to his neck, his daughters wept, and his wife lamented. He said to them, "My sons, this is God's will." Then he left, mounted his horse, and traveled until he reached the orchard. The merchant sat in the place where he had eaten the dates, waiting for the genie, tears filling his eyes. While he waited, an old man approached him, leading 2 dogs tied with belts around their necks, and greeted him. The merchant returned the greeting. The old man asked him, "Why are you sitting here, my friend, in this place filled with jinn and devils? There is nothing in this haunted garden but sadness and sorrow." The merchant told him everything that had happened to the jinn, and the old man was amazed by the story. He said, "Your promise to return here is the work of the brave. By God, I will not leave you until I see what happens with the jinn." Then he sat beside him and they exchanged pleasantries. Scheherazade replied, "With pleasure, O happy king. It has reached me, O happy king of sound judgment, that when the genie raised his sword, the merchant said to him pleadingly, 'Please let me bid farewell to my family, my wife, and my children before you kill me.' The genie asked him, 'Do you swear by God that if I let you go, you will return 1 year from this day?' The merchant replied, 'Yes, I swear by God.' After the merchant had sworn this oath, the genie let him go. At that moment, Scheherazade realized morning and stopped speaking. The third night. The following night, Dinarzade said to her sister, "Please, sister, if sleep does not overcome you, tell us one of your pleasant stories." The king added, "Let the merchant's story end, for I would like to hear it." "As you wish," Scheherazade replied. As it dissipated, they saw the genie approaching them, holding a steel sword in his hand. "If I tell you what happened to me and these dogs, and you find my account even more strange and astonishing than what happened to you and the merchant, will you free him?" The genie replied, "Yes, I will." He stood before them without greeting them and said to the merchant, "Prepare to die." The merchant and the old man began to weep. "When my father died, he left behind 3 sons and gave each of us as much money as he had given the other. Each of us took his money and owned a shop. Soon after, my older brother, one of the dogs, sold the contents of his shop and went on a trade trip abroad to earn a lot of money. A whole year passed when I saw a beggar in my shop. 'Don't you recognize me?' the beggar asked me, his eyes filling with tears. When I looked at him closely, I realized he was my older brother. I hugged him and led him into the shop. I asked him what had happened to him. 'I lost my money,' he replied. I took him home with me and gave him half of my money. I said to him, 'Live your life as if you had never come to this.' He willingly took the money and opened another shop. Shortly after, my other brother, this dog, also decided to go on a trading trip. We tried to stop him, but he wouldn't listen. After a year, he returned, just like his brother. I said to him, 'Didn't I tell you, brother, not to go?' He cried, saying, 'Brother, I've lost everything. I took him home with me, and after we ate some food, I told him I would share my money equally with him. He opened another shop, and we stayed together for a while. Finally, my two brothers asked me to go with them on a trading trip, but I refused, asking them, "Haven't you learned anything from your adventures?" They gave up on the idea, and for 6 years we worked in our shops, buying and selling. But every year they asked me to go with them on a trading trip. Finally, I said to them, "Brother, I'm willing to go with you. How much money do you have?" They had lost all their money, but my shop was flourishing. So I divided my money into 2 parts, then divided the first part between the 3 of us, saying, "I'll bury the other part in the ground, just in case what happened to you happens to me." Their response was, "That's a wonderful idea." After I closed my shop, we bought trade goods, chartered a large ship, and set out on our journey. We sailed day and night for a month. At that moment, Scheherazade realized it was morning and stopped talking. As dawn broke, Dinarzade said to her sister, "What a strange and interesting story." Scheherazade replied, "Tomorrow night, I will tell you something even stranger, if God grants me another day to live. It has reached me, O happy king, that while the merchant and the man with the 2 black dogs were talking together, they suddenly saw dust rising. The old man with the 2 black dogs approached the genie and said, with that, the old man began to tell his story. "Genie, these 2 dogs are my brothers." The 4th night, the following night, Dinarzade said to her sister, "Please, sister, if sleep does not overcome you, tell us one of your pleasant stories." The king added, "Let it be the end of the merchant's story, for I would like to hear it." "With pleasure," Scheherazade replied, "and I sailed for a month on the salty sea until we reached a coastal city. We entered the city and sold our goods and bought other goods to take with us to the ship." Dinarzade said to her sister, "What a strange and interesting story." Scheherazade replied, "Tomorrow night, I will tell you the story of the fisherman, which is an even more exciting story. Upon arriving at the seashore, I met a woman in ragged clothes who kissed my hand, and said, 'Sir, do me a favor, and I believe I can repay you for it.' I replied, 'I will do you a favor without recompense.' She said, 'Sir, marry me and take me with you on this ship.' It has come to my attention, O happy king, that the old man continued his story to the genie. My 2 brothers, I took pity on her, and God guided me to agree. So I gave her a beautiful dress, and we got married. Then I took her to the ship, and we set sail again. I loved her very much. Meanwhile, my 2 brothers were jealous of me and planned to kill me. One night, they waited until I was asleep next to my wife, then they carried us and threw us into the sea. When we awoke, my wife turned into a ghost and carried me across the sea until she reached an island. In the morning, she said to me, 'My husband, I rewarded you by saving you from drowning. When I saw you on the seashore, I fell in love with you and came to you in disguise, and you accepted my love. But now I must kill your 2 brothers.' When I heard what she said, I was amazed and thanked her for saving my life. I told her everything that had happened to us since our father's death, from beginning to end. When she heard my story, she became furious and said, 'I will sink their ship. I will now praise your 2 brothers.' I said to her, 'For God's sake, don't do that. After all, they are my brothers.' Finally, I was able to calm her down, and she flew with me and brought me down to the roof of my house. I went downstairs, dug up the earth to retrieve the money I had buried, then went out to greet the people in the market and reopened my shop. When I returned home that evening, I found these 2 dogs tied up. As soon as I saw them, they came crying to me and began rubbing themselves against me. Suddenly, I heard my wife say, 'Sir, these are your 2 brothers. They will remain like this for 10 years, and they will not be my men again until after that time has passed.' Then she told me where I could find them, and I left. The 10 years passed, and I was on my way with my 2 brothers when I met this man here. When I asked him about his story, he told me that you would kill him, and I promised not to let him go until I knew what would happen between you. This is my story. Isn't it amazing?" The genie replied, "By God, it is a strange and amazing story, just as you promised. I have won, and I will set the man free." Then the genie released the man and left. The merchant thanked the old man, who in turn congratulated him on regaining his freedom. The man returned to his home and family and lived with them for many years until the day of his death. At that moment, Scheherazade realized it was morning and stopped speaking. The story of the fisherman and the genie. The fifth night. The next night, Dinarzade said to her sister, "Please, sister, if sleep doesn't overcome you, tell us one of your interesting stories." The king said, "Let it be the fisherman's story." Scheherazade replied, "As you wish." They were very poor, so much so that they did not have enough food each day. He waded into the water, cast his net, and waited until it sank. "I've cast it 3 times already, and there's only one more attempt. Help me, God." When he pulled it up, it wouldn't budge. He shook it and discovered it was stuck at the bottom. He dived back into the water and worked hard to shake it free until he pulled it ashore. There was something heavy inside. He tried to move the jar, but it was so heavy he couldn't budge it. So he decided to remove the stopper and scoop out the contents. Finally, he managed to remove it using his knife. Then, he tipped the jar to the ground and shook it, but nothing came out, to his great astonishment. He gathered the rope and began to pull the net, but it felt heavier and heavier until he could no longer pull it. The smoke continued to rise from the jar, gathering and forming until, before him, a genie appeared, its feet on the ground and its head touching the clouds. His jaw stopped moving, and his mouth went dry. Dinarzade said to her sister, "What an amazing story." Scheherazade replied, "Tomorrow night, I will tell you something even more exciting, if I live." Its head resembled a castle, its mouth like a cave, and its teeth like formidable fangs. So he took off his clothes and dived into the water, swimming under the net, shaking it and dragging it until he finally brought it to shore. The fisherman went to open the net, filled with joy. But when he did, he found nothing but a large, empty jar. Saddened by all this work, the fisherman said, "What a strange catch." He prayed to God, cleaned and mended his net, spread it out to dry, waded back into the water, and cast it in again. The net got stuck again, and he had to dive in to free it. When he pulled it to shore and looked inside, tears filled his eyes. In the net was nothing but a rotten wooden plank. He exclaimed, "This is the strangest day I have ever seen." The fisherman spread his net out to dry again and prayed to God again. When it was dry, he cast it in a third time and waited for it to sink. This time, when he picked it up, he found nothing but rocks and broken bottles inside. So he began to lament his bad luck. This fisherman cast his net into the water 4 times a day. It is said that there was a very old fisherman who had a wife and 3 daughters. One day, with the moon still high and the day not yet dawning, the fisherman went out past the outskirts of the city to the seashore. The fisherman raised his eyes to the sky and said, "O God, you know that I only cast my net into the water 4 times each day." The fisherman cast his net into the water for the 4th time and watched it sink. When he opened it, he saw a copper jar with a stopper at its end. The fisherman was delighted and said to himself, "I'll sell it at the market. It's definitely worth a lot of money." But after a while, a great cloud of smoke rose, growing in size until it hid the daylight. When the hunter saw it, he trembled with terror. At that moment, Scheherazade realized it was morning and stopped speaking. The 6th night. The next night, Dinarzade said to her sister, "Please, sister, if sleep does not overcome you, tell us one of your pleasant stories." The king added, "Let this be the end of the story of the genie and the hunter. You are welcome." Scheherazade replied, "And why should I rejoice?" The hunter asked. "Rejoice because you are about to be killed," the genie added. The hunter was again pleased and said, "What do I wish for?" The genie replied, "Hear my story, fisherman." Dinarzade said to her sister, "What a strange and amazing story." Scheherazade replied, "It is nothing compared to what I will tell you tomorrow night. I angered the Lord, so he put me in this copper jar, sealed it tightly, and threw me into the sea. I stayed there for 200 years, thinking, anyone who frees me, I'll make them rich. But the 200 years passed, and no one freed me. When I entered the next 100 years, I made a vow to myself, anyone who saves me, I'll make them king and grant them 3 wishes every day. But those 100 years passed, and many more still, and no one freed me. I became furious, and I muttered to myself, "From now on, anyone who frees me, I'll let them choose how they die. And after a while, you appeared and freed me, so tell me how you would like to die." When the fisherman heard what the genie had said, he replied, "To God we belong and to him we shall return. After all these years and my bad luck, I now set you free. Set me free, and God will forgive you. But if you kill me, God will kill you." The genie repeated, "Tell me how you wish to die." Now certain that he would die, the fisherman wept and said, "My children, my lord, do not separate me from them." He turned again to the genie and said, "For God's sake, set me free as a reward for freeing you from this jar." The genie replied, "Your death is the reward for saving me." The fisherman then thought to himself, "He is only a genie, and I am a human. I am more intelligent than he." Then he asked, "Do you promise to answer one question before you kill me?" The genie replied, "Ask." The genie replied, "Tell me how you would like to die." "I have heard, O happy king, that the hunter asked the genie, 'Jennifer, why are you in this jar? Rejoice.'" The genie replied. The hunter frowned at this and said, "Why do you wish to kill me when I have brought you back to this world? Make a wish." The genie replied, "Is this the reward for freeing you from the jar?" The hunter asked. At that moment, Scheherazade realized morning had arrived and stopped speaking. The seventh night, the next night, Dinarzade said, "Please, sister, tell us one of your fun stories." The king added, "Let that be the end of the story of the genie and the hunter." Scheherazade replied, "You are welcome. I have been informed, O king, that the hunter said to the genie, 'By God, tell me if you were truly in this jar.' The genie replied, 'I swear by God that I was imprisoned in this jar.' The hunter said, 'You are lying. This jar is not large enough to hold one of your hands. How could it hold your whole body?' The genie replied, 'Don't you believe I was inside it?' When the smoke disappeared, the genie cried from inside, 'Hunter, do you believe me now?' The fisherman immediately grabbed the stopper, fixed it tightly in the mouth of the jar and shouted, 'Now, genie, tell me how you would like to die, for I will throw you into this sea, build a house here on the shore, and warn every fisherman who passes by that place about the genie, who will tell them how they will die.' 'No, no,' the hunter said. 'Yes, I do not believe it.' The genie flinched and turned into smoke, which rose and spread over the sea and land, then gathered and began to enter the jar. Then he began to roll the jar toward the sea. But the fisherman replied, 'Yes, yes.' The genie realized that the fisherman had tricked him and said, 'Fisherman, don't do this to me. I was only teasing you.' The fisherman replied, 'You are the meanest and most vile of genies,' cried the genie. Finally, the genie demanded in a soft voice, 'Fisherman, if you open the jar, I will make you rich. Free me this time, and I promise never to bother or harm you again, but I will make you rich.' When the fisherman heard this, he made the genie promise God that if he freed him and set him free, God would not harm him but would make him rich. After the genie made this promise to himself, the fisherman opened the jar and the smoke began to rise again. When the genie emerged, he kicked the jar away, causing it to float into the air and reach the middle of the sea. When the fisherman saw this, he knew he would soon die. But he cried out, 'O genie, you have made a promise to God. Do not betray me, or God will destroy you.' The genie laughed when he heard the fisherman's words and replied, 'Hunter, follow me.' The fisherman followed him until they reached a mountain outside the city. They climbed it to the other side and came to a forest. In the middle of the forest, there was a lake surrounded by 4 hills. The fisherman looked at the sea in amazement, as it was filled with colorful fish. The genie asked the fisherman to cast his net. He did so, and then pulled it out, containing 4 fish, 1 white, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1 yellow. The genie said, 'Now, take these fish to the king of your city, and he will give you enough to make you rich. But do not fish here more than once a day.' Then the genie kicked the ground, and it opened up and swallowed him whole. The fisherman, 'My lord king,' did as the genie had told him and sold the fish for a reasonable sum of money. He went every day to the mysterious sea, and each day he caught 4 fish, white, red, blue, and yellow, and sold them to the king. From that time on, His wife and children never went a day without food. They were all very happy, and the fisherman counted his blessings since the day he met the terrible genie. Here Scheherazade realized the morning had come and stopped speaking. Dinarzade said to her sister, "Sister, what a strange and amazing story." Scheherazade replied, "It is nothing compared to the story I will tell tomorrow, if I live." "You are lying," replied the fisherman, "and I will punish you by throwing this jar to the bottom of the sea." "Fisherman, don't," cried the genie. The porter's story. The eighth night. The next night, when Scheherazade was in bed, her sister Dinarzade said, "Please, sister, tell us another of your delightful stories." The king added, "Let it be a story even more wonderful than the story of the genie and the hunter." "You are welcome," Scheherazade replied. She walked ahead of him until she reached a house. When she knocked on the door, an old woman came out and gave her a heavy jug. She put the jug in the basket and said, "Porter, carry your basket and follow me." Dinarzade said to her sister, "Sister, what a strange and amazing story." Scheherazade replied, "This is nothing compared to what I will tell you tomorrow." The porter followed her to the fruit vendor, where she bought red and yellow apples, peaches, lemons, and oranges. She put all of these in the porter's basket and asked him to follow her. He did, exclaiming, "What good fortune! What a happy day!" She then stopped at the butcher's, ordered 10 pounds of fresh lamb, put it in the basket, and said, "Porter, follow me." The porter was amazed at all the wonderful things she was buying. He put the basket on his head and followed her to the grocer, the bakery, and the drugstore. She placed all her goods in the basket, turned to the porter, and said, "Carry your basket and follow me. I have heard, O happy king, that a young porter lived in the city of Baghdad, carrying and transporting goods. One day, as he stood in the marketplace, leaning on his basket, a woman wearing a silk veil and an elegant gold scarf came up to him. When she lifted her face, the young man noticed that she had beautiful, dark eyes. She said to him in a soft voice, "Porter, carry your basket and follow me." The porter took his basket and hurried after her, saying, "What good fortune! What a happy day!" The Arabian Nights. The porter carried the basket and followed had opened the door and saw another beautiful woman with a forehead as broad as the newborn moon and teeth as white as a row of pearls. "I have heard, O happy king, that the porter stood with the basket, and the door opened. When the porter saw her, he exclaimed, 'This is the most blessed day I have ever seen.'" Dinarzade said to her sister, "Sister, what a strange and amazing story." Scheherazade replied, "This is nothing compared to what I will tell you tomorrow, if I live." Then the woman who had opened the door said to the one who had shopped, "Sister, what are you waiting for? Come in and let this poor man unload his basket." The shopper and the porter entered the house, and I followed them from the door. I opened the door into a large hall. In the middle of it was a water basin with a fountain in the middle and a red silk curtain at the end. The curtain was opened, and behind it appeared another dazzling woman, her face brighter than the sun. She walked over and said, "Why are you standing like that?" To lighten the load on this poor man, the three sisters helped the porter lower and empty the basket. They piled everything up in neat piles, and the porter gave me a tip. When the porter saw how beautiful and charming these women were, and the many goods they had piled around them, he didn't want to leave. One of them asked him, "Why didn't you go? Is the tip too little?" Then she turned to her sister and said, "Give him more money." The porter replied, "My God, the money is not small, but I noticed that there is no one here to entertain you. A table needs 4 legs, and you are 3, and you certainly need a 4th person with you." When they heard what he said, they replied, "You are welcome to join us." Then the 3 sisters brought out all kinds of food and drink beside the water basin. The porter thought he was dreaming. The porter and the women ate, drank, and sang, and then ate, drank, and sang some more. The porter was filled with joy, and he began to dance and joke, while the three sisters danced and joked with him. They spent many hours like this, eating, singing, and having fun. At that moment, Scheherazade realized it was morning and stopped talking.